My name's Adam. So good afternoon to all of you. And I'll be the moderator for today's webinar, right? And today we will be discussing about the latest trends in e-commerce. And not just that, we will also be looking into possible future trends. And if you listen closely, you might even pick up some tips and advices from our panel of experts, right? So let me introduce you to our panel of experts. First, we have Barry from iPrice Group. So Barry is a former economist, award-winning fashionpreneur, and retail analyst. He now currently heads the business development department at iPrice, Southeast Asia's leading online shopping companion. Barry?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Adam, for the intro. So I'm head of business development at iPrice. And what we do at iPrice, some of you might already be using it, is largely to conduct price comparisons for products that you know that you already want, right? So let's say if you're looking for an iPhone, then you jump onto iPrice to compare which marketplace is selling the cheapest iPhone, for instance. So we have also begun moving into some partner apps as well. So in some countries around the region, like for instance in the Philippines and Indonesia, in Vietnam as well, we've partnered with some apps ranging from e-wallets to just like consumer financing apps or even super apps themselves to offer an e-commerce element and to make shopping easier for everyone in Southeast Asia. Appreciate any questions that may come my way over the course of this webinar. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Barry. And next, we have Christian, who is responsible for platform partnerships and strategic partnerships at Xero Asia, which is a cloud-based accounting software platform for small businesses. Christian?
Hey, thanks, Adam, for that introduction. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. As mentioned, so I look after the Xero partnerships for the region, especially in the Asia region. Some of you might already know Xero from if you are a customer of Osome, or you might come across our website. So we are the leading cloud accounting platform across the world, helping small business basically get on cloud, helping business owners manage your backend and the reconciliation processes, make it easier and faster for you so that you can focus on what matters most, which is growing your business.
Thanks, Christian. And next we have Daniel, just in time, who has dropped off again. Pardon him, he's in the UK, so maybe connection is not very good. So let's just go ahead with Konstantin, right? Well, Konstantin, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Osome, a serial entrepreneur himself, having started 2 companies, both in the e-commerce space, before joining Osome. And Osome is a 24/7 one-stop corporate service solution that serves startups and SMEs in Singapore, Hong Kong, and the UK. Konstantin?
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you, Adam. And I'm very happy to share and also to learn from the other speakers about new trends in e-commerce and in everything that helps SMEs grow, because at Osome we have this mission that we want to help SMEs grow by taking away the boring stuff, the accounting, bookkeeping, corporate services, and other things that people don't really want to talk about, and do it for them so they can focus on what they do best, grow their business.
Yes, thanks, Konstantin. And well, last but not least, now Daniel. Yes, we see you now. Okay, anyway, Daniel, who is the partnerships manager at Payoneer, whose digital platform streamlines global commerce for millions of small businesses, marketplaces, and enterprises. Daniel?
Hi guys, great to be here. Apologies for the slight delay in joining. I seem to have some network connection issues. But yeah, I work for Payoneer, with the largest financial services company targeting cross-border sellers around the world. And we help to streamline the payments for online merchants and really democratize payments and internationalization for e-commerce brands globally. So yeah, that's me.
All right, thanks, Daniel. So, well, we're here talking about e-commerce, right? Speaking of e-commerces, well, there are some reports that suggest that online retail sales actually grew up to 26% in some countries, right? Last year, the year before, and global e-commerce sales actually jumped to 26.7 trillion in 2019. So these and other statistics, I think it certainly shows that e-commerce is growing at a really rapid pace, especially during this pandemic period. So Barry, I just want to find out from you, is that reflective of what you saw at iPrice, and maybe you can share some of your thoughts?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, actually, it's I guess to some people it might seem counterintuitive, right? With the pandemic, spending should be down because people seem to be losing their jobs. That's all I read about in the news. In fact, what's been observed, well, at least from my friends at Google, what they've observed is that they've noticed that e-commerce has been growing. In fact, during the pandemic in 2020 in Southeast Asia, at 63%. So we've been seeing a 63% growth in Southeast Asia in 2020. And Malaysia and Singapore were in fact the ones that were leading this growth at about 87%. On our side, and iPrice was also so sorry. So that was the demand side, right? So that's how much people are actually consuming. What we're seeing on the supply side on iPrice also is quite interesting. So in less than 6 months, we saw the size of our product feed, and the product feed is what we call the total catalog size. So because what iPrice does is that we get these product feeds from various merchants like Lazada, Shopee, Amazon, Tokopedia, and Bukalapak, and so on and so forth. So the size of a product feed that we have actually grew in size and doubled from 3 billion to 6 billion in less than 6 months. So what that tells me is that that's an indicator also of not just demand that's growing, but also sellers who are possibly unable to operate offline, right? Maybe because of lockdowns, whatever, they couldn't open their stores anymore. There's a sign of clear migration from that offline space to online as they begin to list more and more products in all these marketplaces.
Wow, interesting insights. It looks like I should get my numbers better. Well, probably just like global numbers, and so great insights for Southeast Asia region. And well, speaking of, you're talking about supply and demand side, right? Growth on both sides. So Constantine, just want to ask, right? Do you see that in the trend of companies incorporating with Osome?
It's clearly visible. I think Osome is positioning itself as a more digital alternative to the typical corporate secretary accounting firm. So those that are more digital themselves, who went online to sell their things online through e-commerce for the first time, they will probably be looking for a more digital solution for other services as well, and that's kind of where we see them. We've seen a huge growth. I don't have the exact number of how much bigger it is now than it was the year before, but we do observe that there is a significant growth in people coming out and wanting to sell things online, incorporating companies so that to get going. And then obviously once you're online, you want to be fully online, and you don't want to go back to doing your accounts on paper or even in Excel.
Yeah. Speaking of, sorry, Christian, go ahead.
No, I fully agree with the trend that Barry and Constantine are seeing. Like certainly at Xero, we kind of noticed at the beginning of the pandemic, as with many businesses, we kind of see a dip in sort of like the customers that we are managing. But across the 3 months, like I think as I kind of like read online and also speak to my peers in other technology companies as well, the first 6 months of the pandemic kind of like sped up the e-commerce adoptions and kind of like bring forward the 10 years growth that they've previously observed while they were operating. So certainly, I think 2020 is a year to remember for e-commerce. Like I don't think the customer behavior, the way we buy, is gonna change. It's gonna be more focused on experience and more focused on online experience. Certainly, we are all tuning in online right now. I think that might change a little bit in the future, but I think in terms of commerce and online buying, I think that's here to stay. And as Constantine mentioned, I think as businesses are going online, customers are going online, I think the tools that support that businesses will follow suit as well. Similarly for accounting as well, that's definitely the case for us.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna also, go on to, what we're gonna see, future of e-commerce, maybe not just e-commerce, but the world as a whole, right? And digital transformation and everything like that. Daniel, maybe you can share a bit more about, how Payoneer is helping people, digitalize or streamline their businesses.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we help on the cross-border side of things, which gives us a good indication as to what sellers are doing. Obviously, we can see the payments volume, so we have a quite unique. We sit in a quite unique place to a lot of other providers where we can actually see what's happening on a really large level. So we've obviously seen huge boost on the e-commerce side of our business, and the revenues are at an all-time high, and then that's great for the business. But what I really envisage happening is that there's going to be a consolidation of businesses effectively that maybe have relied on the e-commerce boom over the last year, who might not be best placed to then carry forward. Also, there's going to be a more professionalization of the space, more competition, and I think it's probably moved on from the days where you get in there early, you sell a good product, and you can get away with riding that wave. I think now there's a lot more attention going into e-commerce, and I think there's going to be a whole lot more competition. So I think it's a time where businesses really have to sit down, reflect on what's happening with their business, where they envisage the next couple of years to go, and then sit down and really figure out what they need in order to achieve their goals. Because I don't think it'll be a case of riding the wave. I think the days of setting up a company and riding the wave of e-commerce are kind of being over now. And you see how with the investment from professional services, etc., into the space. I guess where we fit into that, we're very involved with businesses themselves who we work with, and we actively work to help them grow into different verticals and to see where their product might fit well, as well as to give financial backing towards them. I think the financial backing side is probably the most important side when you look at the consolidation and when you look at reflecting on the future. People really need to start investing in or thinking about where they're investing in, what products they're going to invest in, and where they want to take their business into the future.
Yeah, well, I think that point about consolidation is something that is interesting, because yes, I do see that happening. I imagine it happening, right? And I do imagine that there are, I mean, not just this, I think there are a lot of future trends, or maybe current trends, that might affect the future trends in e-commerce in general, right? Barry, I think maybe this is something you can share with us about any such trends that you see, currently that, may affect the future, or any future trends that you want to share?
Okay. There's one thing at least that I've observed during this last 12 months, at least, is quite interestingly, basket sizes on the average seem to be tending smaller. So we're seeing bigger volumes. We're seeing more people buying, but people seem to be buying cheaper products, perhaps. So, like, I'll give you an example. Well, at least in my previous company, Omnilytics, it was a fashion analytics business, and what we observed was quite interesting. So, the mid price segment for fashion, we're not selling as well. So you've got like maybe items in the maybe 100, 200 Sing range that we're not selling very well. But you'd be what we observed was that on the lower price, so stuff like maybe Zalora, H&M, Topshop, and so on and so forth, that saw an uptick. At the same time, on the upper end of the segment, where you're talking about the luxury brands and the premium goods and all that, those held strong. So the middle segment was the one that shrank, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really interesting. And when you think about it, it sort of makes sense, right? People who can afford to do so, people who can afford to shop, they will continue to do so, right? I mean, they haven't been largely affected by lost wages during the pandemic. And on the other hand, it seems like that middle segment, it's not that the middle segment has shrunk, but it's more like it's been moving down. That middle income segment has moved down to a lower tier of affordability. Have you guys seen anything similar on your platforms?
For Xero itself, we don't actually see that firsthand, but I think what we notice is that there is a surge of new businesses coming in, and when we actually do survey some of the new businesses that are coming in, what we see is sort of like a shift in the demographics now, business owners are getting younger, I think it kind of makes sense. But I think that there is a shift in sort of like to millennials and Gen Z now, and as they flood into the start their own entrepreneurship journey and also start buying online as well. And what we notice is that there's a lot of emphasis and quest for our products to be more mobile focused, which we fortunately are. So I think that's the trend that we're going to continue to see for any businesses or any solutions that online businesses especially are going to be using needs to be mobile focused. And I think it's no longer, I personally feel that in the future, it's no longer about just the cheapest price out there, but we need to provide a better experience for the customers itself. So the customers, what we feel is no longer just driven by the price, but experience that we deliver matters as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Constantine, anything to add on to that? Since you guys see a lot of new clients coming in.
Well, yeah, certainly we can't talk about exactly what our clients are making in terms of what they're selling. That's not what accountants usually do. But we do see that there's some growing demand in understanding what's going on. Maybe it was okay to ride a wave, as Daniel called it, and just go online and sell stuff and be happy about it. But the question becomes, which platform is making me most money? Does it make sense to sell it there or here? How do I figure out what margin I make of which products on which platforms? Questions that, what accounting was created for in the first place. Not for just compliance and making sure that the taxman gets his money. It's been created to inform the entrepreneur, and I think entrepreneurs that come from this kind of more digital first perspective, the mobile first entrepreneurs, they also want to understand those things firsthand, and I think this is going to be extremely important to be able to offer services like that for those entrepreneurs. And I think the competition is going to get stiffer, so you will want to understand exactly what products that are going well for you and which are not. In the old school, old-fashioned, well, if I may call it that, brick and mortar sales, you saw this product is flying off the shelves. Now you don't really see it. You need to get into your analytics. You need to understand what's been happening, and you also need to understand, what coupons got you what results. And I think this is something that we see more and more, people wanting to understand what the hell is happening online, because knowing your clients, are you selling offline or online, is going to be super important. But now that you cannot interact with them by just having a chat or the payment, you'll have to find better ways. And that's kind of where I think where a lot of data analytics, but a lot of also accounting tools come in and can help tremendously to find the right offer for your client and understand where the trends are going. That, hey, mid-sized is not working anymore, for example. Exactly that.
Yeah, and talking about mobile first, millennials, and brick and mortar businesses, right? So I've been wondering also, what can existing brick and mortar businesses or even existing e-commerce businesses, right? What can they do to really stay relevant, right, in this whole trend that's happening here? Barry?
Sorry, what is the question?
No, it was about
I lost you for the last 5-10 seconds.
Okay. I was just saying, existing brick and mortar businesses and e-commerce businesses, existing, how do they actually stay relevant, right, for the future?
Okay. That's a good question also, and I think the answer really depends on where, who you're speaking with. In Malaysia, for instance, we're in our third lockdown now. In Singapore, it's reopened to a pretty good extent already, right? So, Constantine, I think, had a great point where he said that it's no longer. Well, this has been the case for years now, right? It's no longer enough to just trust your gut. You've got to really look at the analytics and information of what actually is moving and helping. And I think the biggest barrier to this, at least from speaking to a number of offline retailers, is that lack of data literacy. So a lot of times when we speak to our clients or to our partners and we present them some charts or whatever, okay, you need, this is what the data says, this is what your customers are doing, this is what they're buying. They'll be like, okay, cool. So what? And I think that's that's the biggest obstacle, at least from what I've observed. You can present all this information to them, you can describe the data to them, but what needs to happen is that prescriptive side of things, right? You're prescribing what to do next. And I think eventually, once we get to that stage, then the holy grail would be to turn to something that's a bit more predictive instead.
Okay, Christian, do you have something to add on just now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think data is everything. Data is the new goal in this day and age, and I think it's really important, especially for online business. So I think the new businesses that are coming on these days, they decided to go fully online, especially the newly incorporated business. I think a good way to differentiate yourself is to really think about the experience that you are serving to your customers, how they're actually interacting in your website, or how they're finding you. Is it through marketplace or is it through your own website? And really focus on that, like be that proactive brand, because I think when the customers are looking to buy, they're going to judge on your customer experience and your whole checkout process. And for brick and mortar store, for example, I think what you can do right now is try to offer that hybrid online experience. So if, let's say, they can't actually physically go to your store right now, are you kind of like offering alternative method for them to still purchase from you guys? They can buy online and pick up from the store, or so I think this kind of like integrated experience, it's going to be really key for any businesses. If you're running a brick and mortar, consider that. If you're running an purely online business only, think about the experience you want to serve to your customer, and also the logistic part of it. I think that's going to be really integral, getting the goods from your store to your customers. So there are many things that I think can be improved on that aspect.
All right, thanks for that, Christian. Daniel, what is Payoneer doing, in relation to all this?
Yeah, so I think going back to the other question, I think that the most important thing for an entrepreneur, and it always has been the case, but I think it's even higher now for all the reasons everyone's explained, is probably adaptability. So for an e-commerce business, I think entrepreneurs can get tied down to getting too involved with the difficult aspects of their business. A lot of Amazon sellers and online retailers tend to have smaller employee numbers. Maybe they've got some VAs overseas, but that brings its own difficulties in terms of managing as well. And I think when you look at the business as a whole, because you effectively are responsible for every aspect of the business, which is quite unique, with quite a small team, I think it becomes quite difficult sometimes for online sellers to be being bogged down by the mundane and the data and the logistical and everything else that goes with it. I think where entrepreneurs exist and where they've done well and where they really have a competitive advantage is in using their knowledge of the space and really adapting to everything that comes. Especially in a moment of transition like this, it's important for everyone to have their fingers on the pulse and really understand what's happening in the space, and not get bogged down maybe with the more operational side of things. How do you go about doing that? I think the most important way of doing that is partnering with companies that can help you do that and that are set up to help you do that, and companies you can trust, right? I think if you have the right partners in place, if you can think logistics, this has been outsourced to this company. If you think I've got the payment side of things here, I've got the expansion piece here. If you can outline everything that you need as a business and try and outsource as much as possible, I think that really makes you streamlined as an e-commerce business. And again, put experts in place so you don't have to do that work yourself, and you can really look at the transition and look at what's happening in the market and evolve your business to suit that. I think adaptability is key in any business, and really thinking in a strategic way is key. But in a moment of change like this, I think it becomes even more important. and building for the future. As I said, planning and really building a sophisticated business model for the future is vitally important. I think you can only really do that once you have everything flowing easily around you, once you've got partners in place or employees who are experts, who know their field, so you don't have to do that work. You can really focus on driving the business forward and developing a business, which ultimately, if you're outsourcing that work, whether with employees or different partners, you then effectively become less valuable to the business as the management side of things, and then you can even look towards exits and higher valuations, because it's not just a one-man show. It's a really sophisticated business that you've built, where different providers or different people have different roles within that business.
And I think, to add to that, if I may, the pandemic has shown us that you can work really well with people who don't sit next to you in the room, right? There's no one here, certainly, and that helps people to make the decision to outsource. Obviously, only if this other service that you're outsourcing to is fully digital, it's fully online, it's fully in the cloud. Clearly, you don't want to outsource to someone who's then going to do everything on paper. But the moment you do that, it doesn't really matter if this person works for you, with you, or in the same company as you. What matters is that this person is the best person or the best team to deliver the result that you're after. And I think that's something that the pandemic has shown us. I think not everyone has yet arrived at that conclusion fully, but I think the make versus buy decision that has in the past been always about let's make a bigger company, let's add more people, let's add a department, let's reverse integrate. I think that may just go into the different direction, opening up a lot of opportunity as well, in terms of you can be a specialist in what you do, and you don't need to be a specialist in anything else, and that's quite exciting.
I hear a lot of trends about data, predictability, right? Adaptability, and I also noticed a very, I would say, to me at least, a relatively recent trend, and that is social commerce, right? Social selling. I think that's really interesting, right? But as Constantine has said, we realized in this pandemic that you don't really have to have someone right in front of you, but social commerce, social selling seems to put everything together, right? You have someone there selling the thing to you, and at the same time also, across across thousands of miles away, possibly, right? So Barry, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, social commerce it's something that I've been quite fascinated by. It is really pioneered by China, right, with their Taobao live selling and stuff. In my previous company, which is a fashion business, we were one of the first to adopt this kind of live sales technique as well. So you basically run Instagram lives, and then you have your assistant or a model to show up the stuff on camera, and people would place their orders in real time through that. But social selling has also evolved a little bit, right? In India now, we're seeing a lot of companies raising funds who are in this social commerce field, where it's more targeted towards, let's say, housewives, who have their own auntie network, right? Their housewife network, and then they would be like, I found this great deal on this website, buy from me on this to get maybe 5% off or something, and that spreads like crazy over WhatsApp and stuff. So that's another element of social selling. A third element, which I think could be something that's quite interesting also, I haven't seen anyone else do this as much yet, is rather than it's sort of like merging the two that I described. So rather than giving an avenue for inventory holders and sellers to just sell the products that they have, the problem is that most sellers are not very savvy with either sales techniques or even how should I say it? When you watch this Taobao live sales, they can be like super interactive and stuff. They'll be like banging gongs and all that, right? So not every seller has that kind of ability. So how do you actually scale up something like that? And I was thinking perhaps the next stage of this social commerce would be to get these micro influencers instead, who probably already have dozens, if not hundreds, of items sitting in their house that's been purchased from Lazada, Zalora, and so on and so forth, right? If we could convert these micro-influencers who already have these products, that you don't have to ship out products to them instead, and you don't have to make them test it and all that. They're tried and true, they're tried and true testers of these items already. Let them promote these products and maybe incentivize them in a little way also, right? You give them some commissions out of those sales instead. And I'd like to see that interaction. That I guess that convergence between those two worlds of social commerce come together. Has anyone in the audience any experience with social selling yourselves? Actually, Adam, I noticed there's one more question in the chat which was missed.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions here, but I was thinking maybe you could do it at the end of the whole webinar. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, my question is to the audience generally. How many of you have tried social selling yourselves, and what is your experience like?
Yeah, maybe the audiences can just put in, and then after that we can always discuss that again subsequently. Anyone else want to share about that social commerce part of stuff, or maybe not just about social commerce, but how do you turn something that is that is usually in person into something that is digital?
Yeah, I think I want to add a little bit on that, because I think China definitely has taken social selling to the next level, where they really have that live stream. Personally, I haven't caught on to that trend. I've not personally bought anything online via that way, but I can see a couple of my friends do that as well. So I think that's definitely a very ingenious way of engaging with the customer. But I want to touch on something that is a little bit more easier, I guess, and could be a little bit overlooked. Like, I think social selling can come in a form of just being that active friend on like Facebook, Instagram. You don't have to have that explosive personality. Some sellers might not have that explosive personality, but you can always come up with a carefully curated some content. So it's not always about just directly selling in your face, but about, hey, this is some education piece around our product. This is why it might be useful to you. So it's not always, hey, here's the coupon, go buy it right now. But it's always about building that sort of like credibility around your product and your brands as well, and having them to interact, like comments, and hopefully that will also translate to sales, albeit sort of like a little bit longer. But if you do have that explosive personality, go for it. I think you're going to do really well with the influencer stream. But otherwise, I think you can stick to sort of like a more carefully crafted your brand online. That way, through the established channel like Facebook, Instagram, I think that will do wonders as well.
All right, thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add to that, I think it's important to be aware of new ways of selling and new effectively technologies that you can sell with. Whether or not some of them work better than others, that's a question, and that's really a judgment that business owners need to make. I think that some methods, such as the live streams that are being discussed here, maybe are pushed by the businesses who have created those new markets and those new networks, but it doesn't necessarily mean that just because it exists that it works, right? I think that if you sit down and really analyze what's important, one, you have to have a social media presence. If you've created a brand, that is, that brand needs to be on Instagram, Facebook, whatever else it needs to be on. It's pivotally important in today's day and age if that is the case. So you can tick that off, and then you really sit there and think what's worked for other brands in the past. And when it comes to social selling, once you've covered your own basis like that, probably you'd look at influencer marketing, micro-influencer marketing. And if you can be really strategic in this way and target the right influencers for the right markets, then you can have a huge impact. And I mean, the cost is probably increasing now, but at a relatively low cost, maybe compared to other methods of marketing. So I think it's important to be aware of new trends and new things and new ways you can market. But just because they exist, as I say, doesn't necessarily mean they work. It's really for the business owner to sit down, analyze all of the different marketing avenues, and as I say, really think about where your business aligns, who your target market is, and what's the best way to reach that target market. Taking into account all of the different ways you can now market. So that's offline, online, TV, radio, whatever it might be. That there are so many different avenues opening up for sellers now. it's important just to sit down, reflect, and think about the best way you can target your end consumer.
Well, we have kind of talked a bit about, quite a bit about the how, right? How about the where, right? Should people be looking into expanding into emerging markets or established markets, right? And what are pros and cons there? Constantine, maybe you want to start off with that?
Well, we're only in established markets, so it's hard question to answer for me. Generally, what I think any business decision is going to be about emerging markets. I think there's a question on that. Can you accept money from there? What if it's a market where cash on delivery, for example, is a huge thing? That's usually something that you, as a small SME, will probably not be able to deliver. On the other hand, if you have a product that is so unique, so sought after in maybe small quantities, but around the world because of its uniqueness, then setting that up is maybe worthwhile. Again, know your clients, know where they are, know where they potentially are. I can imagine if you're selling surfboards, probably you can do that out of Singapore, but then you probably will want to sell into places that have better waves, and so on and so forth, right? So it's really going to be about knowing your client before making this decision, and then ultimately, of course, the question of how do you get your money into your bank account. That's a different one, but rather important one, obviously. And here again, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of players, obviously, seeing this problem as well and trying to help companies solve that. I think ultimately what we'll see, and I think this will be a fun time for iPrice, is cross-border commerce being a huge thing, and all those 6 billion products that you'll have to compare not only amongst themselves in each country, but across countries, adding delivery fees and whatnot. It's going to be an exciting time, and I think ultimately, if you find your own niche, if you find what you're great at, you'll be able to make a huge thing out of it. But yeah, you'll have to work for it and find the right ways of doing that.
If I may add to that also, Constantine. So I think the question from Adam was about developed versus emerging markets, right? Another thing that we have observed, at least, is within countries, it's the, how should I say, non-metro areas. The non-metro areas are the ones that are actually booming. Let me think of I'm trying to recall the numbers exactly. What we're seeing is that maybe a third of the shoppers that we're seeing are new, and more than 50% are coming from non-metro areas. So new shoppers that are coming out during this pandemic are coming from the non-metro areas. And you're right, Constantine, with delivery costs and all that. Even within Indonesia, for instance, you've got the far-flung islands of Indonesia, and we're seeing some increase in deliveries that are going there. And because of the some of the partnerships that we have, we end up having to subsidize the cost of the shipping to those far-flung islands as well. Also.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of things that we have to take note of. Whether is it going to be selling it here locally, selling it overseas, or selling it into emerging markets or more established markets. Well, I wish we could discuss more about all this and more, but I'm mindful of time as well. So I would really want to go into Q&A because I see a few questions here already. So I'm going to jump straight in, right? So if you guys have any question, feel free to ask them, and then we will answer them one at a time, assuming if we have enough time. So let's just beginning with Keen Chan's question. Having many payment methods is great, but given the proliferation of many new payment methods, has this generally been good, or is it just overcrowded, right? And how do consumers and businesses feel? Are consumers overwhelmed? Are businesses keen to allocate time and stuff like that? Daniel, maybe I think that sounds like something that we can talk about.
Yeah. I think that it can be without doubt overcrowded and a little bit confusing for business owners where payments aren't necessarily their sole focus and their real strength. Most people who use payments aren't working within the payments industry, right? They're effectively selling goods online. Where it becomes important is to have a partner in place who can help you navigate through these different payment methods. And something that's going to be of pivotal importance in the next probably couple of years is payment orchestration. So this is something that we actively work within. And what this means is effectively we sit above all of the payment methods and allow you to use a variety of different payment methods via our platform. And this is something that's more so targeted towards enterprise, but it will become relevant towards SMEs as well. And we effectively sit at the top level and have all of the different payment methods plug into us. And then depending on your business, your needs and requirements, we then streamline this for you and build it into the platform. So you're only actually managing our platform, but then through APIs and the like, that's managing a whole heap of other payment methods that your business can accept. So it will become over time a case whereby not only ourselves, but businesses like us will be helping to orchestrate the payments. It's without doubt confusing to have so many different payment methods and networks, and really a business that can capitalize on that and can make it simple for you, handle that for you, is a business that you really want to build a partnership with. And as I said, that's something that we do specialize in. I guess with payment methods as well, it's important to be with a fast-moving market leader especially when you look at the emerging markets as well. What I mean by this is a lot of payment networks and companies typically would come maybe from China, maybe from the US, and really these are the hubs for the tech companies that offer the online payment solutions. Where you would be well advised as a small business owner is to be working with a payment institution that can help you across the board and in any geography. Quite often, payment providers, even if they're leading payment providers like PayPal, can't serve markets like Turkey, Bangladesh, Pakistan, for example, South America. And these areas really do struggle with payment providers. I think it's important to look towards a payment provider when it comes to cross-border payments as well as payment orchestration that can help your business enter new markets. An example of this from our side is we help receive from Mexico, Singapore, soon to be Sweden, for example, Dubai. So the payment provider that can integrate you into the vast majority of places and then most places is the payment provider that you should be using, especially when these emerging markets begin to grow. Like e-commerce penetration in some of these markets is absolutely tiny, and it's only going to rise to the levels of the UK, the US, China, for example. So I think being with a partner who can, one, make the whole process simpler for you because it is a confusing space, as well as being with a partner who can open as many doors for you as possible, is of pivotal importance on the payment side. And Payoneer, in this space, we've got probably the largest geographical reach in terms of payments and people we can help with our payment software, simply because we're in so many geographies. So we've got about 25 offices around the world, and really we look to support these emerging markets as strongly as we can.
All right, thanks for that insights. And adding on to that question, right? Al Tan has this to ask, right? How about emerging markets where online payment methods are not as common? Right? How do you navigate e-commerce and then integrate payment?
So I think on this side, if you're talking about cash on delivery, etc., it becomes more difficult. But I think if you're working, and this kind of comes down to the marketplace side as well, potentially, is looking to sell your product in areas whereby they can actually be accepted. But if you were, say, for example, selling from the emerging markets, you could sell your products to the developed markets that can accept these payment networks, and then they can, if you're at least working with a payment provider who can pay you out into your local bank account and enable you to receive that, you can sell from the emerging markets into the developed markets. When you look at selling into the emerging markets where they can't receive online payment methods, I mean, it probably is a case that their e-commerce market isn't so developed anyway. So it's probably a case whereby it's worth waiting a period until the infrastructure there becomes more developed. A good example of this is probably Mexico, but their problems are more so on the shipping side. They've got an enormous potential for e-commerce growth, and they're forecasted to be the fastest growing e-commerce country in the world over the next 5 to 10 years. Their main problem is shipping, but it's not a problem that anyone can solve apart from the shipping companies that operate in Mexico. So for your end seller who's saying, I want to sell into Mexico, how can I get around this problem? The problem's larger than yourself. It's going to be a period of time until you can wait until that problem's sorted out internally, domestically, for then the opportunity to be able to sell into the area opens up. I guess this question is quite similar, whereby if those online payment methods aren't there, how likely is it that the people are actually buying online? But yeah, I could be completely wrong, and it might be about waiting until that infrastructure becomes more developed and then opening up the door to other developed e-commerce countries where they can accept online payments and using the provider that can actually pay you out in your own country as a result of that. And as I say, Payoneer, we can support any country in the world, so we're firmly in place to help there.
If I may add, I think one thing that I've seen in a bunch of countries is kind of this cash to online setup, right? Where you walk into a 7-Eleven or something of that type, your neighborhood store, and you deposit money, and then they issue you like a gift card sort of situation, and you can pay online with that. So that this is also one of those things that get set up specifically in those countries that are underbanked and maybe not able yet to fully work with classical digital payments that we may be more accustomed to in more developed markets.
Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit on that as well, do consider when choosing the platform of payment, like Daniel mentioned, look at the network of the partner itself, because I think at Xero we also believe that platform is the way to go in the future. I think each company, we can't do everything ourselves. What we do is kind of like partner with other providers as well in the market. So I think you look at the track record of the solution provider, whether they have the extensive network of partners, even though the current sort of like growing emerging market is yet to be supported. Likely in the future that you will get good support given the track record that they have in building the past partnerships.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I think the next question is quite similar to another question that's being asked. So here's about Christian raising a point about driving sales from active social media presence, right? So the question is, how much content should be generated, right? And what are the kind of costs involved? And it's quite similar to one of the questions being asked here also about social selling, and it being all saturated, right? So how can we prevent that saturation? So what needs to be done to, how much content be generated, and at the same time, how to prevent saturation? Barry, sounds like it's something that you could share.
Yeah, I think I think the question should actually be, who is your audience, and what is your company selling, right? What do you how do you typically connect with your audience? If your audience is maybe 16 to 25, then sure, you can talk about TikTok and all that. If you're selling pots and pans and to aunties and all that, then of course it's not the right way to go about it. So really trying to understand your own niche and your the kind of messaging that you want to deliver should be the first step before you decide how much content should actually be generated. Cost-wise, it really can be, you can spend a lot on it by hiring experts to do it, or it can be really cost-effective and you run it in-house or on your own. The question about social selling in Singapore, I think you're probably referring more to live sellers, right? I think it's the same with any platform also, like how it was with Instagram posts back in the day. I think it's really two things. Like number one, what I said earlier, really knowing your audience and really locking in your niche and that audience. And number two, it's also like no longer sufficient for sellers or influencers to focus on the prettiness of your feeds or your videos when there are hundreds of others doing the same thing, right? So you really got to build a personality around your face. What is what I call, maybe either it's really your seller's face or your influencer's face, as well as your brand, and be able to really explain and sell a product. That's why you see like the top sellers on Taobao and all that. They are not just pretty faces, but they talk. They can really interact. They're engaged with the audience, and some of them, like I said, they ring a bell. They make it like really loud. It's really that if you're from Malaysia and Singapore, it's really that pasar malam kind of thing that does really well. You know, that kind of night market activity, and it's that interaction with the audience. And of course, it's not a one size fits all strategy. You really have to know who your audience is first.
All right, thanks, Christian. You had something to add just now?
No, I think same to Barry. Like I think there's no magic number on how many posts that can get you into that virality. I think if anybody has that, I would like to know as well. But yeah, it comes down to knowing your audience and try to kind of like space it out. But I think generally, I think if you can post every once a week, I think that will be pretty good. But you don't want people to just come and look at your online profile and the last post to be like 6 months ago. I think that's bad.
Right. Well, I think, we are approaching 5 o'clock, so mindful of time again, I just want to do a wrap up here, Well, thanks a lot, really, Barry, Christian, Daniel, and of course, Constantine. So I hope you guys enjoyed the webinar as much as we all did, right? We may not be able to answer some of these questions, and there may be more questions here. But don't worry, because after the webinar, we will be sending, the contact details of our speakers to you via email. So fret not, if you have any more questions or, reach out to the speakers, please do so directly. And well, stay tuned for the next webinar coming up 2 weeks later from Osome. And until then, thank you. Have a great evening, and I'll catch you guys again soon. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks all.